The echoes of September 11, 2001, still resonate 2 decades later, reverberating across continents and shaping the very fabric of global security policies. On that fateful day, nearly 3,000 lives were lost, but the aftermath catalyzed a seismic shift in how nations perceive and respond to threats. You might be wondering, what unforeseen repercussions did those tragic events have on our world? What you're about to discover goes beyond the obvious. It's about how a singular incident reshaped international relations, national security strategies, and the balance of power in ways we're still unraveling today. The impact of 9/11 reached far beyond the immediate horrors and the agonizing loss. It triggered a wave of global change, affecting everything from intelligence-gathering protocols to civil liberties. Governments worldwide rushed to adapt, enacting new laws and reforming their military and intelligence operations at an unprecedented rate. The question that looms, however, is, how did this tragedy reshape not only the United States but the world? The answer is complex, layered, and, as we delve deeper, startling. In the immediate aftermath, the U.S. launched the War on Terror, fundamentally altering its military engagement and strategies. The invasion of Afghanistan became a precedent, marking the start of what many would term endless wars. Yet, while the focus remained on the immediate regions of conflict, what many missed was the gradual tightening of security measures that extended far beyond borders. Nations that had previously relaxed their security policies suddenly found themselves tightening control. But curiously, where exactly did this tightening lead? As governments seized the moment, the advent of surveillance became a new norm. Programs like the USA Patriot Act were enacted, allowing unprecedented access to personal information and communication data, often justified in the name of national security. You might be surprised to learn just how much global cooperation emerged in intelligence sharing after September 11th. Countries, often fierce competitors or adversaries, began sharing information with each other, forming alliances that would have been unthinkable a mere year prior. For instance, the UK and the US deepened their special relationship, resulting in joint operations that targeted terrorism on a global scale. But wait, what about the cost? As nations collaborated, there were alarming implications for civil liberties. We saw the emergence of extensive surveillance systems, not just in the US but globally. In countries like China and the UK, the implementation of CCTV became pervasive. Did you know that as of 2021, the UK had more cameras per capita than any other country? This is all part of a broader strategy initiated after September 11th, where the line between safety and privacy grew increasingly blurred. The psychological impact was equally profound. The trauma of that day created a culture of fear, and governments capitalized on this. Insurance companies reported a surge in policies covering terror attacks, and many governments began considering terrorist acts as an inevitable part of modern life. Have you ever pondered how this fear altered our everyday interactions? Security screenings at airports transformed from a nuisance to an expected part of travel. Travelers now faced long lines, invasive screenings, and the perception that safety equated to surrendering a degree of personal freedom. You see, it's a cycle. Safety breeds complacency, while vulnerability evokes fear. It raises an unsettling question: is our security worth the freedoms we willingly relinquish? And yet, this also paved the way for a stricter international stance on immigration. Visa policies were tightened worldwide, and countries initiated more rigorous background checks, leading to widespread discrimination against those hailing from Middle Eastern countries. This raises another critical question: did this newfound security approach improve our safety, or did it foster division and mistrust among nations? What you might find intriguing is how these security policies weren't limited to preventing attacks. They also redefined international humanitarian standards. In the US, the phrase extraordinary rendition emerged, a tactic of transferring detainees to countries with less rigorous human rights laws. This intense global focus on terrorism led to a jarring neglect of the humanitarian aspects, as countries prioritized prevention over protection of civil rights. Imagine the implications of handing over individuals to regimes known for torture. It certainly poses a moral quandary. As we progress, consider how global conflicts morphed post 9/11. The U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003, justified under the pretext of fighting terrorism and the facade of weapons of mass destruction, created a ripple effect, instability across the Middle East. You may not realize that the resulting chaos gave rise to ISIS, a group that transformed into a global terror network bearing the scars of U.S. actions. Yet, did the world foresee the ramifications? It's fascinating to note how the rise of such extremist groups wasn't simply a response to direct actions, but also a reflection of vigilante justice. Communities disillusioned by foreign intervention often retaliated, breeding cycles of violence. What comes next will leave you speechless. The fallout from 9/11 didn't just catapult nations into conflict, it inadvertently ushered in an era of homegrown terrorism, where individuals radicalized online instead of through traditional means. Moving forward, as nations sought to prevent such radicalization, an unprecedented collaboration began, a focus on countering violent extremism, CVE. Programs emerged, not only emphasizing military solutions but also engaging local communities and building resilience among at-risk populations. This marked a pivotal shift in security policy, one that sought to address the root causes of terrorism rather than merely treat the symptoms. You might wonder, how effective were these programs? The reality is both enlightening and disheartening. In many cases, CVE programs saw success in local engagement, yet there remained significant challenges in measuring their outcomes. The psyche of fear still hung in the air, making preventive policies hard to endorse due to perennial distrust. Additionally, underlying socioeconomic disparities continued to fuel radical agendas, showcasing the need for a comprehensive approach that extended beyond military might. This brings us to the rise of soft power as a counterterrorism measure. Post 9/11, nations recognized the importance of cultural diplomacy, engaging in dialogue and mutual respect rather than imposing will through violence. Countries started to invest in education, public health, and economic development in regions once riddled with conflict. Curiously, was this the beginning of a more harmonious approach to global security? And then, technology. As a byproduct of these changing policies, technology began shaping security paradigms. Drones, once a symbol of modern warfare, became tools for surveillance, proving effective in controlling conflicts while simultaneously sparking outrage over aerial strikes that often resulted in civilian casualties. The speed at which this technology advanced post 9/11 was staggering, creating an environment where militaries and governments globally utilized modern tech to monitor and engage with potential threats. But here's an unexpected twist. With increased surveillance and reliance on technology, privacy gained renewed relevance. Citizens began advocating for digital rights, understanding that their practices post 9/11 led to diminishing privacy standards. In the depths of this security evolution, individuals started demanding accountability and oversight concerning the powers they had inadvertently granted their governments. Now, shift your focus back on the global stage. The rise of international organizations as mediators for security policies proliferated. The UN grew more involved, encouraging member states to collaborate on multidimensional security strategies and adopt practices that acknowledge human rights. It's a pivotal reminder that security doesn't exist in vacuums. Cooperation and adherence to ethical norms affect long-term viability. But was this evolving cooperation genuine or merely a facade? The complexities of geopolitical tensions, often grounded in historical grievances, made collaboration delicate, reminding us that genuine security policies must acknowledge these deeper root causes. In nations like Afghanistan and Iraq, the shadow of Western intervention, often seen as liberating, morphed into resentment and backlash. Interestingly, the aftermath of 9/11 also revealed the importance of narrative. Nations observed how not only policies but perceptions shaped security. The so-called War on Terror became a brand, a terminology that swayed public opinion and justified actions, despite their actual effectiveness. For many, this raised a pressing question: could we use narrative as a tool for peace rather than division? Yet the answer remains shrouded in complexity. Efforts to reshape narratives around peace and unity often found themselves at odds with entrenched mentalities, making genuine dialogue a daunting task. As we circle back, it's vital to understand that the consequences of 9/11 continue to evolve. From military strategies to civil liberties, from global surveillance to counterterrorism diplomacy, the events of that day set in motion forces that will define international relations for years to come. You might find yourself reflecting, what groundbreaking changes will emerge in the next decade, as we continue to adapt to our current realities? In closing, the untold impact of 9/11 on global security policies paints a portrait of a world forever changed. The intertwining of fear, cooperation, and resilience demonstrates a balance between protecting freedoms and upholding safety. Ultimately, the story isn't merely one of loss, it's a narrative of waking consciousness, an acknowledgement that security cannot exist without a commitment to humanity. We stand at a crossroads, with every decision, every policy shaped by the echo of 9/11, reminding us that our world embodies the choices we make moving forward. As you leave this exploration today, consider how the legacy of that day continues to influence our global landscape. The question lingers, in our pursuit of safety, how do we also cultivate an era of trust and understanding? The narrative of security isn't just written in policies, it's etched in our collective memories, revealing the profound interconnectedness of our global village, even in a time marked by division. So, as the world evolves, keep your eyes and minds open. We're all part of this unfolding story, one that deserves our attention, reflection, and above all, our understanding.